Hello, it's Terry from Terry's Train of Thought, and I'm joined by Tamara Rosenwyn, a prolific writer from The Lizard who's been involved in theatre for many years and has plays put on across Cornwall. Her latest play, Pearl of Wisdom, has been picked up by the Minack Theatre and will be performed on the 16th and 17th of July. Tamara, can you give us some insight into what the play is about?
Thank you so much for having me on, Terry. So, yes, I can give you some insight into what the play is about. So, Pearl of Wisdom is about an old Cornish lady called Pearl, who is 100 years old, and she's about to pass over to the other realm. And before she goes, she must right her wrongs from the past, and she meets her new carer, who is an 18-year-old girl called Rose, who's not dealing very well with the modern world. So they go back in time together, and Rose heals her modern day problems. Pearl tries to heal her past, and together there's a lot of comedy and beautiful Cornish dialect that Pearl has, and just an understanding of what it means to live in the world today and what it meant to live in the world during Pearl's time in the Second World War and the last century, basically, what it was like for a woman who was quite a rebel. So yeah, Pearl's got quite a good rebellious sense of humour about her, and you know that carries throughout the play with our mischievous sprites and all sorts of strange mythical characters. Fundamentally, it's about the power of love, and that sounds a bit cheesy, but you can work out what it's about when you go along to see it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you've lived in Cornwall all your life, but what inspired you to write this particular story?
So I was inspired to write this story because I actually worked as a carer in care homes across Cornwall, and I used to think to myself, God, I wonder what it would be like to go back in time with some of these elderly people and see what life used to be like, because my granddad certainly, drilled it into me as I was growing up, and still does, that Cornwall isn't the same anymore, and there isn't so many characters, and life just maybe doesn't have the magic that it had when he was growing up. And I think, when we think about gentrification and second homes and all of this globalisation, which is taking away some of the regional dialects and regional sense of place and our connection to one another where we live and the land and the sea, it's devastating, really. So I've always tried to embed in my writing a strong sense of place that connects to the characters. And when I remember many incidences of being a carer and thinking to myself, gosh, what rich, broad, beautiful Cornish accents these old people had, and what lovely stories they could spin. And maybe the craft of spinning a yarn is dying out. So I think the inspiration was kind of set way back when I was a young girl, listening to stories from my grandparents, growing up with my mother, who definitely has the spirit of Pearl, that kind of theme of, well, matter do we, that kind of runs throughout, when everything is going wrong, and you just say, does it matter? And you make do and mend, and that's certainly the case for Pearl.
Fantastic. So getting a magnificent theatre like the Minack to showcase your work is pretty spectacular. Can you tell us how they came to hear of your work?
So the Minack came to hear of me originally because I was part of an organisation called the Writer's Block. I had participated in a writing workshop, and part of this workshop meant that you had your work read by actors at the Minack. That was the final stage of this 6-week course that I was on, which was really exciting. And I didn't know this, but at that point apparently they had liked my writing, which was a one-woman show that I was writing, and I'm planning to work on and continue working on that. I'm actually showcasing it to a local producing company soon, so that's very exciting. But they heard that, and even though it's quite a mad story about growing up in the Lizard and mental health and my family and just wacky tales of working a donut van at festivals, nothing really like this play, but in essence a sense of that wacky kind of Cornish humour certainly runs through it. So they'd heard a little snippet of that, and they liked what I write. They thought it was well good. And and then I went on to basically do another course, and I invited one of the course leaders, who's a wonderful woman called Jane Pugh. She's from Penzance, and I said, would you come along and see this play that I've written? It's in a tent at my mum's pop-up campsite, which is in a farmer's field up the road from the Lizard Village. And I said, please come along, I'd love you to see it. Well, there she was, and in the front row, and I was one of the lead actors in this play that I'd gone and written, and I felt suddenly very, oh God, I hope she liked it. And I, not long after, had an email which actually gone to my spam, which is quite funny. So I hadn't heard anything back for like 2 weeks, and then realised that she had actually emailed me quite short, not long after, and I just hadn't seen it, to say the Minack will be in touch. We really think that you could write a play for them. And then I went to meet John Brolly, who is the associate director of the Minack, an absolutely amazing man who does so much for young people in Cornwall and also emerging creative talent like myself, if I can call myself an emerging creative talent.
Oh, of course you can.
So I went and met him, and he said, would you like to write a brand new play for our academy? Now, the academy are young actors, 11 to 18 years old, and I thought this was a great opportunity, so I said yes. And then when I signed the contract and I started to think about what to write, I gave 3 ideas, and they were all based around the lizard, because I was quite keen to feature the lizard in my writing. It always has somehow woven its sneaky little way into what I write. And I started writing this play about Pearl. Weirdly enough, I think the title came to me first, Pearl of Wisdom. And then I was thinking about why pearls of wisdom, and it was just, it's like one of those things, it's all sort of starts to fall into place, and this old lady, and I had a real strong sense of, this can be, that story I wanted to tell for a long time about that old lady and going back in time with her, and she's going to be Pearl. And anyway, I've kind of gone off tangent there, but or off piste and gone on a tangent. But they liked the idea, and it's taken me about 6 months to write, so it took me a lot longer than I thought. A lot of that was my own sort of self-doubt, and I would say this to any writer who's out there, when you get a professional commission, really just trust in your own instinct, because a lot of the stuff that I dropped at the beginning that I didn't think would be good enough to make it into the play, I actually returned to, because I'd been trying too hard to make myself seem like a writer, which I wasn't. And then I thought, no, I want to have that bit at the beginning where the sprites wake her up and she's got indigestion from a pasty, and you keep thinking she's going to pass over, but she doesn't yet, and all these sort of things I don't know that I went back to, and I thought it would be a shame to lose them, and they are some of the funniest bits in the play. So there we are.
That's amazing. Now, the show is going on tour afterwards. How many shows will there be, and where are they going?
Okay, so the show is going on tour, which is very exciting. And it's going to be performed at the Minack on the 16th and 17th of July. And then it goes all the way around Cornwall. So the first date is the Wednesday the 23rd of July, so that's after the Minack shows, and that's at Mount Pleasant Eco Park. And then Friday the 25th of July at Liskerrit Community Centre in Liscard. And then Saturday the 26th of July at the Polly in Falmouth. And then Sunday the 27th of July at Cardnam Woods, which is in Bodmin. And Tuesday the 29th of July at Ebbingford Manor. And then Penley Park Theatre, which is a lovely space over at Penzance. And last but not least, on Friday the 1st of August, it will be at Houston Old Chapel, which is lovely because it's right down on the Lizard, close to where I'm from. So that is good.
Now, I first heard of you through a panto down at the Lizard, and you wrote a panto earlier this year for Laughter. So how do you find the time to write so much?
How do I find the time to write so much? Well, I'm struggling actually, but enjoying it. So I don't think I could do this if I was working a full-time job. I've made crab sandwiches and lobster salads for a while in a local place, and I was working there, and I could work around that, which was quite good. And I don't think my boss minded when I'd be there, deep in thought about Pearl's journey whilst I was there, putting brown crab meat on a sandwich and passing it to a customer with a big goofy grin. So some jobs you can disappear into your own thoughts and kind of be writing it whilst you're working. And then other jobs, obviously, I'm not a brain surgeon, so there are jobs that require a lot more concentration. So I wouldn't recommend trying to write too much whilst you've got an important job. But for me, I'm just managing to make do at the moment and get by. Obviously, the commission with the Minack was amazing, and that was a professional commission, so you get paid. But once that's finished now, I'm probably going to help my mother up at the campsite and little things like that. But for me, you're always, in a way, writing. You're always seeking inspiration. I don't drive, so people might tell me off, but I do hitchhike sometimes if I miss the bus, or I cycle a lot around Cornwall. I just find ways to get to places and spaces, and sometimes that's part of the story. So finding time to write, it feels for me like I'm kind of incubating ideas all day. Sometimes not. Sometimes I'm, just thinking about what I want to eat. Usually, actually. I'm writing quite a lot of different things at the moment, and sometimes it can get a little bit confusing when you're there writing, for example, this play, Mary Bryant. I'm writing a play about Mary Bryant, and it's with two community theatre groups, Laughter, which I started back in 2021, and Greek Players, which has been around for 4 decades and is a fantastic group over at Greek. And this play that I'm writing for them, I dip in and out of it with, when I'm writing it, and I go to meetings with them, and suddenly I'm like straight back into the 18th century with this land of convicts and penal Australia, and it's very brutal, and it's and then I'm also writing a murder mystery with some writers in Houston. And this is going to be really fun, and it's a stupid kind of comedy whodunit with a twist, just really silly, and they're very different, but it's nice to fit it all in, if I can.
Okay, perhaps an interesting question for you next. What is next? Are you writing another play already, or will you be looking to see what needs writing for a specific opportunity?
So next up, I'm writing a play for the Greek Players and for a group that I started back in 2021, which is called Laughter. And so that's 2 community theatre groups, and we're basically devising a play from scratch, and I'm writing the script for it. So it's a lot of research. It's all about, obviously, this 18th century Cornish woman from Foy, Mary Bryant, who she just did this incredible escape from a penal colony in Australia, and she was sent over there in the first fleet of boats and was subjected to such cruel, harsh conditions. And if you didn't starve to death or die of disease and you managed to survive all that, then you were very lucky. But if you managed to survive the journey she made when she escaped in the middle of the night with some other convicts and her 2 young children. She had a little boy that was 1.5 years old and a little girl that wasn't much older, and they survived 69 days at sea on an open-top boat, and she eventually got back to Cornwall, and her children and her husband died, and she was free, basically, and she could return home. And it's a very sad story. I listen to Convict Australia podcasts late at night, so I have the strangest dreams, but it's really shocking for me that this young woman, who was only 17 when she stole a silk bonnet and some other small possessions off a woman in a highway robbery, was sent over to basically the other side of the world. She'd never really stepped out of the West Country before, so this was huge. And all of that just for this very small crime, and all of that sadness and darkness that she had to experience. And I'm so glad that the law and justice system is not like that anymore. So yeah, it's been fascinating. And I'm also writing a murder mystery, although that's being done collaboratively with a group of other writers. And I've enjoyed researching how to do a whodunit, and also working with a local director called Bruce, who came up with this idea for a murder mystery with a twist, which is basically that the actors do the whole play through, and then they pause, and there's a little interval, and then the actors come back on stage. They do the whole play again, but things have slightly changed. Maybe their socks are a different colour, maybe their magnifying glass is smaller, I don't know. But it's quite funny, and it's a very interactive kind of game type of theatre. So 2 different styles of shows that I'm writing, and yeah, enjoying it very much. So though the Mary Bryant play, A Cornish Conviction, I really, really recommend that people come down to watch it. There's a live band that will be playing on stage, because the convicts had a lot of music that played on the ships. There's beautiful lighting and media elements, incredible costumes. It's going to be really beautiful, and it's a story which is true, and I've tried very hard to stick to the truth as much as possible by doing a lot of research with Charlotte Mackenzie's research. So she's a historian who has basically spent a lot of time looking through Cornish archives and found out so much more truth about this woman's past. So yeah, I really recommend coming down to see that. That will be in November 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. And then the murder mystery with a twist, dates are yet to be announced, but you can look at our Facebook page, Lizard Arts Film and Theatre Association. And we also have a website, lizardlaughter.co.uk, and you can keep up to date with what's going on. But yes, thank you so much for having me on your show, and it's very exciting.
Thank you very much for talking to me today. And anybody who's listening, get down to the Minack on the 16th and 17th of July for Pearl of Wisdom. And if you can't make it, get onto that touring schedule.